Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you're searching for the most direct, efficient, and honestly science-backed way to conquer that feeling of total academic overwhelm, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're not just going to throw a random list of generic study tips at you. Instead, we're going to build what I call a pyramid of success. We're going to construct your ultimate academic strategy, literally layer by layer, pulling directly from the latest research on study habits, psychology, and neuroscience. It's a question we've all asked ourselves, right? Usually at like 2 a.m., staring blankly at a screen with a lukewarm coffee in hand. Why do some students just seem to effortlessly thrive, while the rest of us feel like we're completely drowning in an endless sea of to-do lists and all-nighters? Well, we need to figure out that difference. And to do it, we're going to stack our solutions from the ground up. We aren't starting with fancy, high-level calendar apps. We are starting with your physical foundation. Because think about it. If the base crumbles, the whole pyramid comes crashing down. All right, let's start at the absolute base of our pyramid. Section 1, the biology of success, building the foundation. Here is the hard truth. Absolutely no amount of productivity hacking, color-coded highlighters, or AI tutoring is going to save you if your biological foundation is collapsing. You literally cannot outschedule basic human biology. To really understand this foundation, just look at this incredible insight from the EUCLA Business School. They note that during sleep, the brain consolidates memories, processes information, and clears out toxins that accumulate during the day. So consistent sleep isn't just rest, it's actually your ultimate memory-building tool. When you pull an all-nighter, you are literally cutting off the exact biological process that files your study material away for that big exam. Without sleep, everything else just crumbles. And building right on top of that sleep foundation is this magic number 150. According to the health guidelines highlighted in our research, 150 minutes of moderate intensity weekly exercise is your baseline. Why? Well, getting your blood pumping actually increases blood flow directly to the brain, delivering all the oxygen and nutrients that are absolutely essential for cognitive function. But even more importantly, it stimulates the release of crucial neurotransmitters like dopamine and endorphins. So exercise isn't some luxury or a distraction from your studies. It's the literal biological fuel that improves your focus and your mood.
So how do we lock in this biological foundation day to day? We can look to some great data from the mindfulness app. They suggest breaking your day into 3 tiny mindful pauses. 1, a brief morning wake-up connection. Think just 3 deep breaths. 2, a short midday break to physically step away from the screen and just reset your nervous system. And 3, an evening wind down to signal to your brain, hey, it's time to rest. Habit stacking these 3 tiny pauses actively lowers burnout and builds up your emotional resilience. Remember, it's all about consistency here, not perfection.
Okay, biology is stable? Great. Let's move up to the middle layer. Section 2, the psychology of success, identity, and keystone habits. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding what a keystone habit actually is. As defined by the experts over at CoachBit, these are single behaviors that naturally trigger widespread positive changes. Nailing just one of these behaviors, say making your bed every single morning or regulating your sleep schedule, causes this massive ripple effect. It organically organizes the rest of your life. When you consistently do this one single thing, you experience a literal identity shift. You go from saying, I hope I can study today, to I am an organized person who gets things done. CoachBit identifies a few of these incredibly powerful keystone habits. Things like a consistent sleep schedule, a solid morning routine, reading before bed, planning tomorrow, or just taking a daily walk. But here is the catch, and it's a big one. The biggest mistake you can make right now is trying to do all of them by tomorrow morning. Please don't do it. Your goal is to focus entirely on establishing just one of these behaviors. Seriously, once that single keystone habit is rock solid, then you can start adding others to your stack. Now, building on that concept of psychological identity, there's some genuinely fascinating research from Nova Southeastern University, Florida, that reveals how our stage in life totally impacts our motivation. They looked closely at how a student's age and where they are in life completely alter their psychological approach to learning, stress, and overall motivation. Let's actually compare these mindsets directly using their research. Traditional students, usually the folks coming right out of high school, often lean pretty heavily towards social comparison. They are highly sensitive to the cost of their time, and they frequently evaluate themselves against their peers. On the flip side, non-traditional, older students tend to utilize what's called adaptive coping strategies. Because they might be balancing families and full-time jobs, they generally avoid emotion-oriented coping when faced with a challenge, and instead, they favor laser-focused problem-solving. Neither approach is right or wrong, but understanding exactly where you fall can really help you identify your own motivational blind spots and leverage your unique psychological strengths.
And that brings us to the very peak of our pyramid. Section 3, the strategy of success, high achievers and execution.
You've got the biology, you've got the psychology, now we need the tactical execution and the actual study habits that separate the absolute best from the rest. A really compelling study from the University of Kotley analyzed these specific habits. They found that high achievers actively evaluate their own performance. They systematically make schedules and they actively seek out multiple resources. Low achievers, however, tend to struggle significantly with time management and they rely way too heavily on basic rote learning rather than true deep understanding. The takeaway? High achievers don't necessarily just study harder, they manage the process of studying much, much better.
But honestly, I want to share something really interesting and, honestly, a little reassuring from that exact same data set. Researchers found that even high achievers sometimes wait until the night before a quiz to review. No way, right? They occasionally stress out, they study in front of the TV, and they mess around on their phones while working. I love this so much because it proves you don't have to be some perfect, flawless robot to succeed. You just need a system that keeps these slip-ups as the rare exception rather than the everyday rule.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, time blocking for execution. So how do we keep those slip-ups to an absolute minimum? We pivot to the ultimate antidote for procrastination and chaotic study sessions. According to the experts at Jotverse, time blocking is the act of dividing your day into defined periods dedicated to specific tasks, rather than just working from a reactive to-do list. You know, traditional to-do lists are actually terrible for students because they create massive decision fatigue. You look at a list of 20 things, you get overwhelmed, and you just freeze. A to-do list also completely fails to account for time as a finite resource. Time blocking fixes this entirely by telling you exactly what to do and exactly when to do it. Now, if you're sitting there wondering if time blocking is actually worth the effort to set up, look at this number, 0.5. Research from the American Psychological Association found that a structured approach to time management, like time blocking, can raise a student's GPA by a massive half point on average. That is huge. It reduces your academic stress while simultaneously improving your performance. That right there is the power of working with a real schedule instead of just a wish list. When you look at a real, functioning schedule like the one mapped out here, you can see these segmented, color-coded blocks. But the real secret sauce isn't just the work blocks, it's the buffer blocks. Notice the spaces intentionally left between tasks. When you transition from one subject to another, you experience what's called context switching, which heavily drains your cognitive energy. By visually building in just 15 to 30-minute buffers, you protect your brain and actively prevent burnout as the day goes on. So, here is your highly actionable roadmap to create your own time-blocked calendar right after this explainer wraps up. Step 1. Audit your current time. Figure out where your hours are actually going right now. Step 2. Identify your fixed commitments, things you can't move, like classes and, yes, sleep. Step 3. Calculate your required study hours. And Step 4, which is my absolute favorite, apply the 2x rule. Whatever time you estimate a paper or a reading assignment will take, double it. Just double it. This accounts for unexpected research rabbit holes, and it prevents your entire schedule from crashing down when a task inevitably runs a little long. Well, we've officially reached the top of our pyramid. We've covered the baseline of sleep, the psychology of Keystone identity shifts, and the immense practical power of time blocking. But I want to break the illusion right here, right now, that you need to overhaul your entire life overnight. You really don't. Doing that leads straight back to the overwhelm we're trying to escape. So I'm going to leave you with a challenge. What is the one tiny Keystone habit you will change tomorrow? Will you add just a 15-minute buffer to your calendar? Will you commit to reading a book before bed instead of scrolling? Pick just one tiny brick. Start there and watch your own pyramid of success build itself. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy learning.